adversity, bring it. The struggle, I welcome it. Snooze on life, never that. I am Dave Regina, and this is the No Snooze Podcast. Come on. Welcome back, No Snooze Podcast, episode 173. As always, I'm in the booth with a new three. We have William, Billy Council, we have Claudio the Voice, Valenzuela, and I am Dave, the Body, Regina. William Council is a Harlem native, entrepreneur, community advocate, film producer, coach, councilman, and mentor. Billy is also the founder of the Council Hym Foundation, a nonprofit organization with a primary mission to inspire, empower, and equip young men of color. Merging his passion for basketball and filmmaking, Billy produced the compelling behind-the-scenes documentary Little Ballers for Nickelodeon, collaborating with executive producer Crystal McCrary, musician Lupe Fiasco, and NBA star Amari Stoudemire. The documentary received an NAACP Award nomination for Best Children's Film. Building on this success, Coach Billy co-produced Little Baller Indiana in 2017. Billy's dedication extends beyond Harlem, encompassing various communities within New York and across the United States. His persistent efforts have earned him multiple awards and recognition, showcasing the impact of his unwavering commitment to positive change. Billy Council, welcome to the podcast, my brother.
My brother D, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, man, and I appreciate that intro, man. Sometimes I listen to it and kind of like, wow, I did a few good things. My mom should be proud of me.
Yes, absolutely. So before we get into things, I got to be transparent. You know, I get Starbucks typically for the guest and for CV myself. CV never wants anything, but Coach Billy over here ordered the dragon fruit drink, man. Is this something that you do all the time? Where did this come from? Because I've never had it.
You know, it's interesting. You know, my daughter, I was taking her to school one day and she said she wanted to go to Starbucks. And, you know, I was like, why are you going to Starbucks? And she was just like, I was like, you don't drink coffee. She was like, no, I want to get this drink. You should try it, Dad. And I was like, you know, trying to impress her. Like, okay, yeah, give it to me. And, you know, she ordered a dragon fruit. And I was like, yo, what is that? And then when I drank it, it was pretty good.
Well, when you said dragon fruit, I was thinking like a dragon fruit. And so I go into the app and I type dragon fruit. And the only thing that popped up was this drink. So if you're not familiar, grab yourself a pink drink from Starbucks. It might be good for you. I met Billy right before Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
At Angelo and Priya's house.
Right.
We had a nice little moment. We knew some mutual people through the sport of basketball. But you know, we went around the table and basically did a moment of gratitude.
Right.
And I had loved everything that you were saying. You and I caught a really good connection right from the jump. So I figured this conversation would be a good one.
Absolutely, man. And it's overdue.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's get right into it.
So you know, I want to start and again, you know, I need to know everything about you because there was about 10 things during that intro, you know, but I'd be remiss if I didn't start with the background. So you're a Harlem native. What was the, I guess, family dynamic growing up, and what was it like growing up in Harlem?
You know, the family dynamic was, you know, typical, you know, single mom household. You know, my dad was definitely present, but he wasn't in the household. And, you know, growing up in the 80s was kind of tough, especially in Harlem, right? You know, where you had, you know, your whole, you know, basically the community was filtered with drugs, right? And then, you know, I grew up, you know, in a household with me and at that time, it was only 4 sisters. You know, it was myself, 4 sisters, and my mom. And, you know, but the funny thing about it, we were in a community, right? Because in the building that I grew up, my whole family lived there. You know, my grandmother had 4 daughters, and all 4 daughters had an apartment in the building, right? Wow. So it was like, you know, it wasn't just, you know, my mom and my sisters, and it was a family. It was a community in the building.
Any boys?
No, I was the only boy.
Wow.
At the time.
So they spoiled you.
Yeah.
They spoiled you.
But I did have a cousin, one of my aunts, you know, one of my cousins lived in the same building with us, so him and I kind of grew up like brothers, right? But in my household, it was just me and my siblings and my mom.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool. What was the takeaways and the family values that were learned early in that house? And I guess, so that's a unique dynamic. You said it was typical, I guess maybe for Harlem you were referring to in terms of single parent household.
Yeah.
But yeah, so tell me, I guess, about the values that were learned.
One of the values that, and I still enforce today, with my family is the ability to congregate together as a family, right? To kind of, put your differences aside when it's time for us to build. My grandmother was a big force in that, right? She kept the family together. My mom, and again, when you talk about growing up, I grew up with a mom who had a substance abuse issue, right? So when your moms have a substance abuse issue, it's kind of like strange, right? Because you have people in and out of the house. You have people who you don't really know that's there. And then you also think it's normal, right? Because you saw so many other kids in your community, in your neighborhood, parents who were also addicted to the substance abuse. So it was kind of interesting, right, when you growing up there, but it was one of the things that we always stuck together, right? The whole block was basically my cousin, right? Even though they weren't my cousin, but they were my cousin, right? So, it was a very unique family value system that we all kept together.
Yeah, I think it's kudos to you for being able to not go the opposite route of the way that you went. Obviously growing up in Harlem, so I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York, very similar in terms of the household, except for mom and dad were together for a portion of the years. Then I ended up living with my father. My mom was addicted to drugs and alcohol as well. But I saw a lot of turmoil just in the neighborhood, to be honest with you. Like I was one of, a few white kids that were playing the sport of basketball at that time, right? So I understand, racial inequities on the opposite spectrum of what typically is talked about with race. But I've seen, a lot of people I grew up with, they're dead or in jail, and it's got to be the same way for you in Harlem.
You know what? It was, right? And, I'm not going to sit here and say it was cookie cutter for me, you know what I mean, came through that, right? Because, and especially in the urban communities, you glorify what you see and glorify what you know. And, that was something that I kind of glorified, the street life, right? And being involved with the streets, right? And, unfortunately, I got shot 6 times and left for dead in my building in Harlem growing up.
We're not just going to skip over that. So we're going to stop right there. You were shot 6 times.
Yes, I was shot.
Now, was this anticipated fire? Was it accidental fire? Were you the target here?
I actually was the target because they actually came to my house and, they came in my building. And it was funny, now we joke about it a little bit, but my sister sometimes get upset. But, it was one morning she was leaving out the building and I was coming down the stairs behind her and someone asked her, "Do you know Billy?" And she was like, "Yeah, he's coming down on the 8th staircase." I'm coming down on the 8th staircase. Time I got to the 3rd floor, he was standing right there and he just opened fire 6 times. Got me in my stomach, my back, my arm, my leg. Yeah. So that was, yeah.
And how old were you here?
I was like 21.
21. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
like
So you're a young adult.
Yeah.
Now, how did you recover from that?
Man, that was probably one of the hardest things to do, right?
Even physically?
And physically, and, and even to this day, still emotionally that we still deal with that. For me, I was in the hospital for like 5 months.
Wow.
I had to learn how to walk, eat, talk, use the bathroom, all of those things that we take for granted. That was me, right? And trying to figure out how do you rehabilitate your body first, right? That was the first thing because at that time, as you know, like in the 90s, like we didn't really talk about the mental health aspect of it, right? You have to get better physically so people can see it and then they move forward, right? And for me, that was the hardest part, right? Getting my body back together, right? Not, having to use a bathroom in a bag, right? Learning how to walk, right? There were certain things that I can't eat to this day, right? Because of my stomach, right? So all of those things played a part on trying to figure out how do you change the narrative and how do you get better, physically.
Wow. Did how did you live, dude? Like, what major arteries were missed? What major arteries were hit? Like, did you just get lucky? Like, when the doctors saw this, were they like, dude, you're the luckiest man in the world? Or were they like, you know, because you hear people who've been shot a bunch of times, but they're shot in like places that aren't significant, I guess, to the body, you know, in terms of life or death. But you said in the abdomen or the stomach?
Yeah, it was
the
stomach 3 times, the back once, the leg, and my shoulder.
So the abdomen had to be clearly the most impactful here.
It was the most impactful area, but here's the thing. It didn't really tear no arteries. It went in and out. Right? So
lucky.
Yeah, lucky.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, my mom telling me that I turned, and that's the reason why it kind of went in and out. Right. And, you know, maybe if I didn't turn, you know, maybe it'd have been a little bit different. Right. But yeah, that's what happened.
I want to hear about the entrepreneurship journey for you. I guess let's start with what was the first job and how did the work ethic come about for you?
I think the first job.
And I guess talk to me about where the passion for entrepreneurship then came, right? Because I think there's 2 types of people in the world. You have your intrapreneurs, we call them, right? People who, you know, you can still make a great living, a great career. Like for myself, yes, we have this entrepreneurship journey here with No Snooze podcast, but most people know, you know, I'm an intrapreneur in local government.
Right.
And, you know, it's a great career, but also it's more of it's a safer route for sure, because being an entrepreneur and working for yourself, you know, there's a lot of risk involved. The reward, if you can get through it, oftentimes is very good. But I'm always curious to hear, you know, other people's perspective on that when they're in that world.
Well, you know, for me, I had no clue what I really wanted to do. Right. I knew. And you know, again, like I was always the one who had a job, like whether it was a corporate job, I walked on Wall Street, you know what I mean? There were certain things that I always did, but I always had that entrepreneurial spirit, right? I always needed that passive income, right? Because, you know, one of the things that I always wanted to do was to show our young people that you can be in the same game, right?
Yep.
And have the same clothes and have the same cars that guys that you admire on the street, but you're doing it the legal way. Right. So now that means I may have to hustle a little bit harder and, you know, from the perspective of going to work. Right. But it was cool. So I think one of my first jobs was, it's interesting, and this will let me into like entrepreneurship, it was a restaurant called the Shark Bar. Shark Bar was probably in the 90s one of the top restaurants in New York City that everybody wanted to go to. You had all the rappers go there, all the ball players. Any star celebrity would go to the Shark Bar. And I wound up getting a job at the Shark Bar as a delivery guy. And, you know, not just delivering food, but then it was just the relationships that I was building because I became a consistent figure to certain people who were ordering food.
Right.
And then, you know, I rose in the rank from there, went from a delivery guy to assistant manager to manager. And then we wanted to open up a restaurant in Queens. I went out to Queens. I moved out to Queens and opened the restaurant there. And then it came back, and then it was, had the opportunity to open a restaurant called Willie Michael Southern Cafe. We wanted to be the first soul food restaurant on Black college campuses at the time. So we did an IPO, we did all of that stuff. And then it actually fell through, it didn't work. But then that's when I got the taste of, you know, leadership and the taste of entrepreneurship. So then just started doing random things, right? You know, went from promoting parties, the hottest parties in New York City at one time, doing it for, you know, any celebrity that was releasing an album, we did a party for it. And then just kept going from there. And then, you know, then stayed in the restaurant business, and then just kept moving. You know, and then it was just so many other things that I wanted to do. I was still into basketball. Then I wanted to develop a basketball program. You know what I mean? So it was so many different entrepreneurial efforts that I tried to do. And then, you know, as recently, you know, did a nonprofit, then did the movie things and all that other stuff. So it was always in the blood. It was just like trying to get something to stick. I call it organized chaos.
Organized chaos.
Yep.
I like that. And I just want to unpack something for young entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs. And I don't say that as a dig. I say that as if you're desiring to be an entrepreneur, there's something to be learned here through your journey. You know, you started as a delivery boy
Yeah.
and worked your way up in that organization to then get not only the knowledge, but the experience and really feeling what it's like to be in that space. And then you decided to go on your own.
Right.
The problem that I know CV and I see a lot with youth is that, you know, the social media game kind of messes them up. They're like, I'm going to get rich quick. I'm going to not really get a real job at first. I'm just going to start my own clothing company, or I'm going to start my own thing, which is great. But you should also be learning the skills and building a team with people who are in an organization with you, right? And then the connections that are made through building that, I think in the long run is the way to go versus, you know, the youth these days, they just want to, everyone wants to get rich quick, but it's not a reality.
It's I call it the microwave effect, right? You want to put your career in the microwave and boom, in 2 minutes, it's
Popcorn.
cooked and it's popcorn and it's done, right? And people don't realize there's so much hard work into it, right? It's so many failures,
Yes,
right? It's so many nights where you broke. You're not making any money, right? And people think, you know, because Instagram and social media, it shows like, you know, it shows finished products, right? A lot of times Instagram doesn't show the beginning, like you and I just talked about, right? They don't show the hard work. They don't show the grind.
Yeah.
They just show when they sitting there and they got a check, or you know what I mean? They don't show that stuff, right? So it's like, and the other thing that our young people forget to do is build themselves a board of directors of their life, not just of their business, but of their life. Right? Because there's so many aspects that you need that guidance.
Why is that so important?
It's important because we don't know everything, right? And you can't do everything, right? But when you have a board of directors, you can go to them and say, hey, I need help with this and that. And then your board of directors also are your connectors. They're the ones who can connect you to the next, whatever that is. Sometimes we, as entrepreneurs, we get into this habit of not seeing success through from the beginning. We see it from the beginning, from the middle. Right.
Oh, from the middle.
Yeah, we see it from the middle.
More towards the end.
Right. No, the middle and more towards the end because it's like, okay, that's where I'm gonna be tomorrow.
Right.
But you don't know tomorrow, those 24 hours is so long. You see what I'm saying? I think it's important that you have mentors, right? And I think that's one of the things that I wish that I had growing up a little bit more. Is a mentor, someone who can kind of like guide me and, you know, show me the path and show me the steps that we have to take. A lot of times it's like, it's not there.
Yeah. You mentioned, you know, setbacks and a lot of failures along the way. What has been, I guess, the biggest, it's a two-part question. The biggest emotional setback in your life, and then also a business setback or failure that ultimately then, I guess, propelled you forward.
That's an interesting question. I think one of the things emotionally was understanding who I am and understanding my purpose. So a lot of times we forget our purpose, because we're not taught our purpose. Purpose sometimes is learned, right? And my purpose became after I got shot. So we had to go through something extremely bad and then come out and say, okay, this is my purpose. You know, from an entrepreneur perspective, I think it's the same thing, because sometimes we think we are set to do something, but that's not the path, right? So you can be set to open up a bunch of restaurant chains, but the path may be through those restaurant chains, you create a nonprofit to give back to the community. Right. You know what I mean? So for me, I think the biggest setback from an entrepreneur's perspective was learning how to lose and fail. Right. Because that was a lesson. It's like you work so hard to get something and you getting it. But then you don't lose at all. But then when you finally lose, it's the setback that kills you, because it's like, okay, how do I start over? How do I rebuild?
There's a interesting dynamic though. Anybody that I talk to, or even my own in my personal life myself, for Dave Regina, I firmly believe that those who go through adverse moments, I mean, it doesn't have to be as extreme as getting shot 6 times, But the loss of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job, I do believe that we end up having a leg up in the long run because, again, with the youth, you think that you have it bad, but it's not until you really experience something that humbles you and grounds you. For me, it was my mom's journey of, recovery. It was me overcoming a chronic health condition and Crohn's disease. Me in the current separation that I'm in. On top of that, I had lost my dog of 13 years, which absolutely sucked. Like being in a house that you built with your family. Now you don't have the relationship anymore. Your daughter is now not in the house for half of the time. So the one thing that you want is that best friend and that dog. And then he goes. And then I go through the spiraling moments of hearing his footsteps at night, even still sometimes, right? I still have a witching hour between 2 and 3 a.m. where I get these, these bad thoughts, but I'm able to work through these things now. And I really do use it as fuel to my fire. But I would you agree that going through those things end up adding a benefit to your life?
As you sit here, I get kind of choked up because recently I just lost my mom.
Sorry.
I lost my mom 54 days ago on Thanksgiving.
On Thanksgiving?
Yeah, on Thanksgiving.
So this had to be right after I met you.
Yeah. A couple of weeks later, I was, I think, matter of fact, I think it was because we talked about something and I was just like, I'm gonna go visit my mom.
I thought you were visiting your mom.
Yeah.
No. Yes, your mom's still alive.
No, at the time she was.
Yes.
At the time she was, and didn't realize in the next few days she'd be gone.
Oh man.
And a little bit about that, like I went down to see my mom's for Thanksgiving. Got there like Tuesday, Wednesday. We hung out and we laughed and we joked. We laughed, we danced, and my mom and I usually get in the car and we usually sing, right? Old tunes. Mm-hmm. And 12 hours later, I was pulling her off the respirator.
What
when you talk about adversity, when you talk about strength, my mom fought cancer 6 times.
Wow.
She was, the last bout was ovarian cancer. She had ovarian cancer and lung cancer at the same time.
Wow.
And, and she was so optimistic, right? So when you talk about adversity, you look at a woman who one day was strung out on drugs. Mm-hmm. Then, worked her way through it. Then the cancer battle, right? With getting both of her breasts removed in the beginning in like 1990 something.
Wow.
And then fighting all of this way through.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But one thing that I realized is she kept a smile on her face and she kept smiling through it all. And I used to sit there and I used to say to her, like, how do you do that? With all of this going on, how do you do that? She just looked at me. She said, because if I don't, then who else gonna do it for me? Then y'all gonna make me sad because y'all sad. Mm. So if I lead by example, and I move with intent, integrity, optimism, I'm going to be okay. And that's what she did for all of those years fighting. And I remember even to the day before she died, she said, we were in the hospital. And she said to me, boy, take your behind to the house. I cooked all this Thanksgiving food. I'm going to be okay.
Oh.
Cut that TV on. Let me watch the parade. I'm going to be okay. And I left.
Wow.
And that was the last thing that she really said to me was like, no, I cooked all that food for you. Mm-hmm. For you. So go eat. So when we talk about like the strength, that's what kind of makes me keep going on. It's just like, yo, you know what? My moms were strong. So everything that we going through now, mm-hmm. the separation, the loss of your dog and all of that stuff, it hurts, but it's a bigger picture out there for us.
Right.
Right. And we got to figure out a way how to keep going, even in those midst of sorrow, misery, hurt, pain. We got to say, you know what? You look at your daughter and be like, you know what? This is what it's all about.
Yep.
Making sure that you good. So how do we keep going? You my strength. You my everything. Let me go now. And that was one of the things that I'm starting to feel it now. And even though I still feel that pain, but I still feel her saying, nah, baby, I left you at the right time. I left you at the time where I knew you were good. I left you at the time where I knew you can handle everything. Now go ahead. Now I want to go to sleep.
That's powerful stuff, man.
See?
That's very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I know it's cold in here, but I had the chills.
Yeah, I'm shaking a little bit.
I had the chills. I had the chills as you were explaining that, man. And rest in peace to your mom. I can tell the impact that she's had on you, that she continues to have on you on a daily
thank you,
basis.
brother.
And now it's all kind of making sense. Everything that you've touched on and done in your life. There was a very strong woman behind all of this stuff that instilled a lot of great things in you, man.
Right. I appreciate it.
Kudos
Thank
to
you.
her.
Thank you.
We have our ACE Summit coming up. Action Cultivates Excellence. It's a men's personal and professional development summit. It's a 3-day experience, February 16th to 18th, New Paltz, New York, and we're inviting 25 men who are looking to level up their lives. We'll be doing guided cold plunges, leadership training, breath work, group workouts, expert-led workshops, and a keynote from the Yankee legend, Joe Girardi. There's something to be said about surrounding yourself with 25 like-minded men. This is about building a community, fellowship, and a brotherhood. So whether you're looking to grow in business, your fitness, your relationships, or simply develop new lifestyle habits, this retreat is for you. It doesn't matter if you've made mistakes in the past or you haven't been able to commit, or you're telling yourself you're not worthy. Let me tell you this. This is a new year. 2024, you are worthy. You're supposed to be here. Remember, the best investment you can make is in yourself. We all have a thought of what being a man in today's society is. And yes, it's a strong provider and a protector, but real strength lies in vulnerability. We're looking to bridge the gap between masculinity and vulnerability and bring out the absolute best in each and every one of you. AceSanctuary.com for tickets. We will see you there. Basketball journey. How did your passion for basketball come about? Mine, I got to be honest with you, it came about because I was not getting picked in the park, man. Like, I loved basketball my whole life, and that's how I know Angelo.
Yeah.
We played at Manhattanville together. But, for me, it was more of I was so passionate about this sport of basketball, right? Like, and I was naturally better at baseball and football.
Really?
But I didn't face the same adversity when it came to basketball. But because of my skin color and where I grew up, people didn't necessarily want to pick me. So I said, you know what? All I really have to do is put that ball in the hoop better than most people.
Right.
And y'all going to pick me.
Yep.
So that kind of created a little swag about me to where, like, I wanted to become the best shooter in Mount Vernon. Like, that was my goal in the local parks, in the CYO leagues. Like, that's really what I wanted to do. And I ended up, doing that pretty successfully from where I came from. And then obviously my passion tied in with the work that was, getting put in. And basketball allowed me to do some great things when it came to education. I went to a $55,000 a year high school for free. Don't really have college loans to deal with, but the impact that basketball and the sport has had in my life, teaching me teamwork, resiliency, learning how to lose, learning how to win and how to win humbly. I think the sports in general these days, they're kind of undervalued, and even you see what's going on with football, where like contact, tackle football is like going away.
Yeah.
I think that's a dumb thing. That's a side note, because if it's taught properly, I think it's a very safe sport.
Right.
But talk to me about basketball and kind of how you got into it, and then lead me to the Wren's journey.
Okay. So I got into basketball because, especially growing up in the inner city, right? That was that we thought that was the way out, right? I wasn't that good. I was good, but I wasn't that good, right? And because my dad had, the means to have me in these programs, right? I wound up playing in some of the with some of the most exciting teams in Harlem, the Young Bucks, Young Life, and Young Life was actually out of Mount Vernon. Yeah, Young Life started in Mount Vernon,
Wow. So,
Yeah.
that name isn't ringing a bell for me, but maybe that was a little bit before mine.
Yes. But yeah, Young Life started out in Mount Vernon, and I was playing basketball, and like you said, I wasn't the best, right? I grew up with the sham guards. I grew up in that era.
Yeah.
So we had some players. I wound up going to Cardinal Hayes. I played ball at Cardinal Hayes for a little while, but then I wound up after I got shot and I wanted to fall back in love with something that I love. So it was basketball. And what happened was I was out one night partying, and one of my good friends, my cousin Des, he said to me, I said to him, I want to coach. And he said, my boy Carlos runs this program up in Washington Heights. I'm going to connect you with Carlos. So we connected that night, and Carlos said, Bill, come up to the gym tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock in the morning. So these guys, they have parties, they drinking and everything else. But guess who's not drinking? Me, right? So they thought that I wasn't going to show up. So 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm in the gym like, this is what I want to do.
Energy on 1,000.
Energy on 1,000, right? And just always had the mindset of teaching, right? And mentoring. So we started that process, and I wound up coaching at IS 90 with the Washington Heights Warriors, which eventually, who we all know today now, is New Heights.
Oh, okay.
So I was one of the first coaches at New Heights. Shout out to Nick, Adam, and at New Heights, and so I started there, and from that process, I got the bug. I got the coaching bug, right? And it was just like, okay, well, I want to do this, I want to do that. Then we wound up leaving New Heights, and I wound up going to be the director of basketball at Kips Bay Boys and Girls Club in the Bronx. From Kips Bay, I decided, built that program up for about 3 years and got it to a place where, they were starting to be known a little bit more now than they were in the past. From there, I wound up going to be the director at a pay-for-play program, basically called Fast Break, which is in the city.
I've heard of Fast Break.
Yeah, which is in the city. And that's where I met my good friend, Crystal McGuire at. From there, it was that journey, right? You then start winning national championships with Long Island Lightning, and from Long Island, shout out to Dingo and Shandu. But then, I wound up going back to New Heights. And, my good friend Kamani Young, who actually now is at UConn, assistant coach at UConn, he was the director at New Heights. And he was like, Bill, let's do this Batman Robin thing. I take the high school, you take the lower grades. And we did that. And then that was the year that I wound up making Little Ballers. And we, came in second in the Nationals in Detroit, 5th grade. And at that moment, I was just like, I got, I'm building a name for myself as a coach.
There too,
right. Yeah. So now, Dan Cloris, came, the media mogul. He came and he was like, because his sons was on the team. He was like, Bill, I want to start this program. I want you to start it with me. And I was just like, what it is? He was like, I got this name that I own. It's like the Wrens. And, then the history of the Wrens, the first African-American basketball team in Harlem. And, from there, it was like, it was go time. So created this program called the Wrens, and I wound up leaving 4 years later. After to pursue some other stuff, I wound up becoming the athletic director at Bishop Lackland High School, coaching there, and still kind of wanted to keep going. Then I had my aspirations to coach college basketball. Still putting the work in and, developing relationships, because relationships is what gets you in the door. And then, wound up settling, and I wound up becoming the assistant coach at Mercy College. Did Mercy College for like 3 years. And, that's where that whole basketball bug started at.
Yeah.
So it's like we can start from the beginning and go all the way up.
Right.
But that's how I got involved with it.
Great journey. And some of the names you drop in, incredible men and their impact through the sport of basketball. Talk to me about the filmmaking now. Like, so it's dope for me to hear, and this is anything in life. Like, I think when you're able to tie a passion of yours, which was basketball, to now really creating something, which would be this film, how did you get the opportunity to like do that, right? Because that's not something like, just because you love something doesn't mean that you're going to be able to make a movie about it. Like, how did that connection happen?
So it goes back to building relationships. So rewind, when I left Kibbs Bay, you know, a lot of my parents was upset. Like, you leaving these kids and you doing, you know what I mean? And it was just like, the guilt trip. And it was just like, yo,
I got a life
gonna
too,
pay me a little bit more money than here, right? Like, I don't, you know. So I get there, and I said, when I finally got to Fast Break didn't really do AAU. And I still wanted to be in the AAU circuit. So I said, let's start an AAU team. And, you know, my guy, Lonnie Levine, who was the owner of Fast Break, he said, okay, you know, I'm going to give you a budget and you start that, but then you're going to have to figure it out after a certain amount of time. I was like, all right, cool. And I did that. And then, you know, one day I had tryouts, and, you know, this little kid was on the team, and he was just like, he wasn't good, but he was just fast. He was aggressive, hardworking.
One of those.
Yeah, he was just a beast, right? Wasn't that skilled. But I just fell in love with him. Didn't know who he was, didn't know his parents, didn't know anything about him. I just liked his grit, right? Because it's like, for me, it's like, you start with that heart for your team, and then you can build around.
Yeah, I can teach you the rest.
Right, I can teach you the rest. So he came, and we had tryouts, and then, you know, I finally met his mom and his dad, you know, at the time. And my friend Crystal came to me and she said, hey, do you have any footage on yourself? I said, no, I don't really have no footage on myself at all. I'm really not into that. She said, I want to do some footage of my son. I was like, okay, fine. So she started taking the footage, right? And she was like, Billy, I have all of this footage. I'm going to make a story about it. But then I didn't realize who she was.
Right. Yeah.
Because she was already a movie maker. She already made a film, right? So I didn't know. And then I didn't even know that her son, her ex-husband was Greg Anthony, who played for the Knicks.
Yeah.
Had no clue, right? Until one day he walked into the gym.
Yeah, you're like,
right?
Okay.
Yeah. I was like, now I see. So when it happened, long story short, it happened, and she was just like, hey, we have like a story that I'm gonna tell. And I was like, okay, what's the story? And the story became about these 4 young boys who wanted to aspire to be in the NBA. And then she did a trailer of it, and it was good. And then she was just like, I think she took it to Amari, one of our producing partners, Lisa Bonner, took it to Amari Sodom. No, to Lupe Fiasco, and then Tammy Fry, who was a PR agent. She was representing, I think, Amari Stoudemire. And she took it.
Why to Lupe, though? Like, Lupe is in the music world.
Yeah, but you got to remember, just because you're in one area of business doesn't mean you don't want to enter into something else.
Right,
so if I have the opportunity to jump into somewhere else to get points and get credit for something, then why, right? Because I put that on my resume. So Lupe said, let's do it. And when they did the story, it was about these 4 guys. And then it was just like, nah, we need something else. And then Crystal was like, you know what? Let's tell your story. And I was just like, no, I'm not telling, because I'm not telling my story. Like, you know, but that's how I got into the film through my good friend Crystal McCrary. Yeah.
The connection piece is.
Yeah, the connection piece. Yeah.
Is incredible. And relationship building, really, I mean, and CV and I see it, you know, even with what we do here, you're literally one connection away to changing your entire life.
Yeah.
I actually heard a clip. One of our buddies, has one of the biggest podcast platforms in the world, Rashad Bilal and Troy Millings of Earn Your Leisure. So they just Rashad was just talking about a clip, and he said, you know, it gets to a point where you can't learn anymore. You've consumed, you know, as much content as possible. You know what you're supposed to be doing. You start executing. You start taking action. But the thing that ends up propelling you is that one connection. So it's important that once you have all the knowledge that you need, you start focusing more time on building relationships. And that's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Wow. No, and I love, again, just to reiterate, though, the opportunity of the passion, you know, being able to provide an opportunity like that is super dope. Yeah. All right, now I'm going to switch gears and go to the community advocacy part. I can tell how passionate you are, not only of basketball, inner city, but community in general. community is a word to me that I have found through every hard moment in my life that I can think about. The word community definitely comes into play. I mean, you look at our mom's journeys of addiction. Now my mom is 5+ years sober. She has a community of AA members, right, that propel her forward. For me, with Crohn's disease, I had joined the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America. It was a support group that provided wellness services for people to, talk about your issues. So there was community there. Obviously, with the podcast community, I'm meeting incredible individuals. Me, what I do professionally, community. Me in Mount Vernon, New York, through sport, community. How did you get into now wanting to make this a somewhat of a career? Because then you held office as a councilman in Harlem, correct?
No, I didn't win a seat.
Oh, you didn't win a seat.
Yeah,
okay, you ran.
I ran, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so talk to me about like the passion for that.
So I think the passion comes back from getting shot, right? Because I remember getting shot. My grandmother, my mom was sitting there, and I don't know which one said it, but one of them said, if God pulls you through this, you're gonna have to do His work. What is His work, right? In my head, like, what is His work? Do I got to go to church? And you know what I mean? So it became service, and through basketball, right? So when you start one place, you end up somewhere else. So coaching basketball and saving these young men life and becoming a role model and a mentor to these young people, it was just like, okay, yes, I'm doing that, and that's great. And then, as you continue to grow in that aspect, it's something else. And then it was like, I always gave back. Like I always gave to people less fortunate than me, right? Because I always thought that my blessings is going to come back. I've been blessed already. Right. So sometimes, I struggle with what is blessed, right? Being blessed means, God give you the opportunity to continue to help others. So I said, I want to do more, right? No matter what I did, it was always about service. And I remember during COVID, and I was always politically conscious, right? I always believe in the voting. I always believe in making sure you know who you are electing and why you're electing them and why they're saying the things that they're saying. Do you believe them? So it was like, you got to do more. So now it was a knock on the door. Okay, you did this. Let's close that door a little bit, right? Let's open up a new chapter. Let's start it all over again, right? So during COVID, I was giving out gloves, I was giving out masks, I was giving out food, I was giving out all of these things just to help my community, right? Because they say you got to start within, right? So I start within my community, the community that I love. And one of my good friends at the time, Ayanna Harry, who is a reporter for New York One, she said to me that, Harlem needs new representation, right? Because, again, and as you know, in these seats, a lot of our elders hold those seats forever.
35 years.
And don't want to give them
Never
up,
leave.
right? But then they start losing the community, right? Because the community don't believe that they're fighting for them. So they was like, we need some new blood. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I was like, I don't know nothing about politics. And she says, you don't. You know what it is to provide and bring resources. So that's what you just have to do. And then we will put a team around you to help you.
Right.
And that's what happened. And I got into the political field and I ran for city council in District 9 in Harlem. And I didn't win at the time, but it told me that I still had work to do with our people, right? Because, people don't realize how important it is to vote in your local elections. Right. Everyone thinks that you vote for your president, that's all you have to do. They don't realize the president doesn't make change down in your community, right? So your local leaders are the ones who make change. But one of the things that we did realize that we did in the community at that point was we got new voters and we got younger voters, right? Because now I was that voice of the young people, the voice of people who didn't believe in the system and who didn't believe that someone like me, from where I came from, can make a difference, right? And that's where that political mindset came from.
That's awesome. Do you still have political aspirations?
I think the political aspirations are still there. I think, one of the things I start realizing is, do I need to be in office to make change? Right? Because, I may not, right? But maybe I need to be in office to make change, right? So it's a lesson that I learned, and, but the aspirations are still there.
Yeah, and also it's nice to have personal challenges like this.
Right.
This is a new challenge to unlock for you.
Right.
And getting into that world and dabbling. And also, I do hear, most people know I'm a huge advocate for local government. I've been in, the state now for 11 years. I work on a local level in Westchester County. And I do direct community work. I work for a community resource department, which is not very typical in government. But I strongly encourage young people to get involved and begin to understand exactly what Billy's saying here, to realize and listen to who you're actually putting in office. And by not voting, you're actually voting, unfortunately, because what happens is, we see it all the time. There's older individuals who have been in office, and the reality is on a local level, you might not even need that many votes to win. But if you don't vote, you're not even allowing who you really want to win an opportunity to win, because these old folks are going to go ahead and put their ballots in and vote. Yeah. So us young people need to get involved.
Right.
So I love that.
And it's interesting because, when we looked at the numbers afterwards, you look at the demographics of voters in that district, right? So Harlem is big, right?
Yeah. So what's District 9?
District 9 is Central Harlem. Gotcha, so that's like from Huntington Street, Fifth Avenue, all the way up to probably about St. Nicholas, all the way up to 155th Street.
Okay, I was going to say, is it after 160? All right, so
yeah, so when you have about 160,000 registered voters in that district, but you only need 4,000 votes to win, it's like, yo, where was everyone else at? Why are we not voting? And then having these conversations with people start not believing in the system. People don't think they vote count. People don't really see the change, right? Because they don't understand, right? And I think this is one of the things that, I'm starting to do now is teach that, right? Why is it important, right? Why? Who do you vote for? Why do you vote for them? What can they change? They don't know about your assemblyman. They don't know about your district leaders. They don't know about your city council person. They don't know about those people that's fighting in Albany for you, right? Because that's not taught. So it's like now you got to reteach your community on the purpose of voting.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's difficult.
Definitely, yeah. I saw a nice clip of Jim Jones endorsing you. Is there a personal relationship there? You know him?
Yes. Jim is one of my close friends, right? Jim and I don't speak every day, right? But Jim and I went to Cardinal Hayes together.
Gotcha.
Right? Jim and I have been friends since we were kids, right? People call him Jim Jones. I call him Jamo, right? That was his name in school. And, his mom's is a sweetheart. So yeah, that's my brother. And anytime I need him or, any community event I'm doing, Jim is like, Bill, what do you need? And I'm there. He came out to my big community event last year and supported, did a mini concert for the community. And one of the things that I'm gonna say about Jim is he's always giving back to the community. I remember a couple of weeks ago, he got flack because people was asking him what he have done in the community. You got to be in the community to see the work that Jim does. And I'm not just saying that because he's my friend and my brother, but I'm saying that because I see the work that he does. And, he always like, Bill, what can I do? How can I help? He was the first he was the first rapper in Harlem to say, yo, Adams, you need to come up to Harlem and we need to have this conversation. So Jim is, he definitely is one of those brothers who, I love and support. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're saying that, I'm immediately thinking of Jadakiss, Styles P,
those are good brothers. Yeah.
Because these guys, they really, people hear their music and it's rap music. So yeah, certain words might not align with your vision or whatever, but these guys are really in the community like that. And so to hear that about Jim Jones too is super dope. I mean, Jadakiss and these guys, they're every Thanksgiving. I mean, for years. I mean, even when I was in Mount Vernon, I used to go. Yeah. Right. I would just skip cross town to Yonkers and go to their events where they were giving out free backpacks and things like that. So it's something that definitely gets missed on a political world about, I think with rappers in general, right? That they don't do enough for their communities. But you said something good where you have to be in the community to actually see the impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then how did you got a lot going on here, man. How did the nonprofit come about? And great name, by the way. I mean, first of all, Council for Council is dope in itself. Then the Council Hym Foundation.
Yeah.
You being a coach and a mentor, I mean, it just goes well, man. So I love the alignment here. But how did that come about?
So it's twofold, right?
And talk to us about the mission.
Okay, cool. So, oh man,
so how it started first?
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry,
how it started, and then get us to the.
So how it started was interesting. So, do you know Tamika Mallory?
I know the name.
Yeah, Tamika Mallory. Yeah. She's an amazing community advocate and leader. One day we were sitting. No. So let me just back it up. So in my film, Roland Martin is in my film, right? And Roland Martin had a piece where he said that there are so many jobs in sports and entertainment that our young people don't know of because they don't see it. Boom, a light went off in my head because I was thinking about starting something to, and the next day, a couple of days later, I had a meeting with Tamika Mallory. And Tamika, and at this time, she was about to start United Freedom with my son. And the three of us were supposed to go to a meeting. My son didn't come to the meeting, but Tamika was there. And we were just talking. And she was just like, my work is going to be different than your work. You need to start something else, right? Because at the time, like, I was really like involved in her son's life. He's like a nephew to me. And she said, I got a name for you, Council Hym. It stuck with me, right? And I just went on and I did some other stuff. And then, I was sitting down one day after watching The Little Ballers again, and Roland Martin Park came on. So I said, you know what? Let me go a different route. So many young men, and as a coach, so many young men in our community aspire to be two things: rappers and ball players. That's their aspirations to get out of the community, right? But they don't realize there's so many other jobs that are entail sports and entertainment that doesn't entail you to be in the front stage, the ones behind the scenes. And a lot of times those get overshadowed, right? You have the agents, you have the marketers, right? You have the engineers, right? You have the producers. Like, these are the people who usually don't have 250,000 Instagram followers.
But they make it all happen
they make it all happen.
Who has 250,000.
Right. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to create a mentoring program that shows our young people that there are so many other jobs in sports and entertainment that you need to be connected to. So it's like connecting those resources. Like, all right, forget the ball player. I'm gonna bring in the lawyer who negotiates the contract. Right? Who gets 3% of that contract, right? So that contract is worth $20 million and you getting 3%, right? So, and I wanted to start that program, that mentorship program, and that's what how Council Hym was developed, right? Because there's so many mentorships programs, right? But I always say, stay in your lane. My lane was sports, right? And as an athletic director, I saw so many young people who were saying, I want to go to this big Division I school. I may not play that much, but I'm on that level, right? Instead of saying, okay, but what's the other thing that you want to do? You want to be an engineer. So you're going to go and take a business course just because you're going to this D1 school? Right. Go to this mid D1 school, take D2, up engineering, take up engineering and play. Right. So you get 2 for 1, right? And it's like, but so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an engineer who helped, that's black, that look just like you, who helped build this arena right here.
Now, the mission itself is exactly what?
To inspire and equip young men to become the best that they can be in their particular field. So that's like the short version.
Men of color, or
yes, young men of color.
Okay,
right. Yep.
And now, why did you choose that route with men of color? Is it because of how you grew up, where you grew up? That's what's around. More, I guess, underprivileged individuals. What is it for you?
So for me, at the time that I started it was for that reason, right? That our young men in our community don't have mentors. Our young kids in our community don't have the resources, right? They don't know how to obtain those resources compared to some of the white kids who were in those programs who had that access, right? Who had that, their parents had that network where they can just take them over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in certain communities, you have to work a little bit harder and you have to have a little bit of luck on your side. So, and then again, those were the kids that I was mentoring. Those are the kids that I had. Those are the kids who I felt needed that support. And, not taking away from any of my white nephews, who I call all my kids my nephews, but, they, understood that, right? And, they didn't get neglected, right? But I just felt that we had to help our young Black boys, at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Even the work that, CV and I do for the majority of our careers, we've been in, spaces of underprivileged and underserved communities. But then also the reality is too, and what I find through my work in local government is that there are opportunities there that are available, but it's more so the exposure to them. Because a lot of times, you mentioned the Boys and Girls Club early on in this conversation. So the Mount Vernon Boys and Girls Club for me was very impactful,
right.
But I had to actually get there and go. Whereas, we do see a lot that, kids don't walk through the door or their parents aren't getting them through the door. So it's us going and getting them and dragging them by the neck. Yo, this program, you need to be in it. Because then once you're in the programs, now you're going to be more privy to different conversations. You're going to be privy to different connections and people are going to want to help you.
Right.
But we as a society need to get these individuals, whether you're Black, white, brown, green, whatever. If you're in an underprivileged and underserved community, the first step is finding these programs and getting them into the door.
I think that's like you said, and that's true. The programs do exist, right? And being in local government, the program exists, but it's just how do you find them, right? And then a lot of times, and especially in our community, in the urban communities, like we don't really look for the resources. Like if it's not there, it's not there, right? And then sometimes in other communities, they search for these programs, right? Even now in our community, there are so many resources there, but a lot of times our parents kind of, lack the time to really research it, right? Or I can't find it, right? And sometimes it takes a little bit more digging, as you know.
And also I think there's a big miss on this too, and I talk about this conversation all the time in the rooms that I'm in. The fix here is all of these kids go to school.
Yeah.
They all go to school. So it's bridging the gap between education and then recreation services and these other extracurriculars. But we have to be in the schools.
Right.
You have to be able to deliver a message properly to these students. And the way to get to these students, because, we see it. You put a flyer in a kid's backpack, you can get into the school, you can drop off 1,000 flyers. But now the chances of that actually getting into the parent's hand, it's slim.
Yeah.
So you have to go into the schools, and we encourage our team to get into these local schools to really see face, to touch hands, to feel, to sit down with not only the teachers and the administrators, but the kids.
Yeah.
And that's where that connection really happens. And I think we do ourselves a disservice as a government because we're not funding enough to get, these actual programs, the awareness into the education system.
And the other thing is, like you just said, we got to go get them.
Yes.
Right? Like we put flyers. So one of the things that government has to do, and this, we have to be in the trend, right? We have to be on social media.
Right.
We have to be a direct link so these kids can see it.
Right.
Right? You know what I mean? And then, you can't service young people without servicing their parents. So we also got to service the parents.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Like
because there's parents who like, okay, I don't, I feel a certain way because I can't read it or I don't understand it, right? We got to be able to be friendly with those parents and we're like, okay, no, we got these resources for you too.
Great conversation. I'm very passionate about this stuff.
Yeah, me too.
I know. Fatherhood, man. And again, this is very personal for me. I do this podcast very selfishly at times to hear from individuals that I look up to. And I know you're a father of two. Is that Three.
Yeah.
Father of three.
Yeah.
How has that journey been? And I guess what's been the most difficult thing in fatherhood?
I have two girls and a boy. Right.
Who's the oldest?
My daughter.
So you get daughter, son, daughter?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the oldest one is a little bit different, right? That's, she's not actually my biological daughter, but she's my daughter. I raised her since she was around 5, and one of the things about her is she is probably the sweetest girl that I have ever met, right? And, trying to provide and protect is one of the things that I always say is my responsibility. And, and having those girls make you understand life a little bit more, right? Because with my son, that's my road dog, right? But one of the things that I learned about my son, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit, is I never became his father, right? Because at that age, he grew up with me coaching, right? So he was either on the team before me or the team right after me, right? So if I was coaching 5th grade, he was in 6th grade, right? So whatever program I was in, he was with me, but I didn't know how to be his father. I only knew how to be his coach. Right? So everything, and I didn't learn this until 2 years ago when him and I going at it, right? Because I was there, but I was there as a coach, not as a father. I pick him up from basketball practice, or we at basketball practice, or we in the gym when we working out, and everything was basketball. Get in the car after a game. You didn't do this, you didn't do that, right? Oh, you got to get up in the morning because we're going to have an early workout. We're going to do this. So having my son kind of taught me how to understand of being a father, what a father really is. A father is not somebody that you just there. Right. So I think I did a little bit better job with my daughter than I did with my son. My son is my best friend, and we have a great relationship. Like, that's my dog. But I understood, like, having a conversation with him. He was like, yo, Dad, you was there, but you wasn't there emotionally for me. You know what I mean? You know how hard that, like, you know how hard that hit? Like, you think you doing the right thing. You think you're doing everything you're supposed to do. But nah, Dad, you ain't there emotionally. Yo, you didn't tell me how to put a condom on. You didn't teach me how to, you know what I mean, do this and you do that. I had to learn, but you know what, Dad? I saw you do that to other young people. Right? There was a part of my film when he was there, and he said something that was so profound. He said, my dad wants to always be at my games, but I know that he has to coach his own team. So hearing that broke my heart. Right? Because I didn't show up to his games. And I remember he told me, like, when they won this, they was going for the state championship, and they were playing a team, and the father was there of the opposing kid. And it was talking a lot of junk to him. And guess what? He was like, yo, I was so upset because this guy's father is there, but my father wasn't there. Right? You know where I was at? I was coaching a high school game. Right? So, that was the stuff that I wanted to do differently with my daughter. So when I had my daughter, I wanted to be everywhere she went, do everything she did, not miss nothing. Oh, I got work? Nah, I ain't doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Wow. Even to this day, my daughter has a ballet thing, right? I fly to Charlotte just for the day and just fly back just so I can be there, so I can be present. So I think that's one of the things that, I learned about being a father, is showing up and being present. And the stuff that when I see you with your daughter, like, it melts my heart, right? Because I see the connection and relationship that you have. I see how she looks at you and how she talks to you and how she makes you laugh and how you look at her. And I don't think that love that we have for our daughters can be matched no matter what. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. No, and I really acknowledge your ability to, it's a self-diagnosis and a self-awareness, of where you may have missed with your son. But as you're saying, you guys are best friends now, and it also helped you to now be the best father possible at this stage in life now, too.
Yeah.
And your son, you were speaking on the Council Hym Foundation. He happens to do that line of work. He's behind the scenes in sports management, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
And now, was there a correlation there? Like, how did you start the foundation before he got into that?
Yeah, the foundation was started. I think I started in 2017.
So I mean, that's proof in the pudding right there, though.
Yeah, 17.
Wow.
And it's funny because his best friend is Cole Anthony, right? They've been friends since they was 6 years old. And we thought, growing up, because my son was really good, that my son probably would be the one to go, but it happened to be Cole, and they kind of knew this whole thing during their high school years. And when Cole went to UNC, they had this pack, like LeBron is not going to be the only person who's going to bring his childhood friends along, and we're going to do this. So they created this company called CYI Soon, which stands for Count Yourself In. And he manages Cole and some other players. And he's doing really well. He's doing his thing.
He's doing
like,
his thing.
Sometimes I'm like, wow, can I get on the paper?
Don't forget about me, man.
Don't forget about Dad over here, right? But nah, they're doing their thing, and I'm proud of both of them.
Of course. Yeah. And I think also there's a huge testament to you, man, as a father, because you did something right, and you did a lot of things right for these guys to get to where they're at.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for the new dad, right? Even whether it's me with a 3-year-old or somebody, I know a lot of listeners who are in relationships where maybe they just gotten married and they plan to have children. What would be the advice to these young fathers coming up?
Just be present, right? And enjoy the time and enjoy the growing pains. Like, there is no book. So don't let people sit there and tell you the guide of being a dad or guide to being, a successful father, because you're going to stumble, right? You're going to try to say, all the things that my father didn't do, right? Come to the games, be at the games, right? Come to practice with me. I tried to do that, right? But it was something that I was missing. Mm-hmm. I was missing the emotional piece. So now for my son, what he's going to try to do is work more on the emotional piece when he has kids. Mm. So, just be present. Right. And just take it all in, and then continue to try to change the narrative of what it is to be a father in your eyes.
Yeah. And I guess the only thing that I would add to that, one, I would confirm that the book thing doesn't work, because I happen to read, I forget the title of it. It was called The First Year, I think it was. And it's a huge book. I mean, this thing is like 500 pages. It took me a long time to read 500 pages. But I remember stepping in and being a couple months in, and I'm very routine and disciplined and consistent, and my regimen is on point.
Right.
The kid will throw it off. So I always tell this story. Well, I don't know if I've even shared it on here, but my daughter she was going through she slept pretty well from the start, which was a blessing. I'm like, this fatherhood thing is easy. Give me 7 of them, right? Then you go through a little phase where they're not sleeping so good. Then you go through the phase where they're real sick for the first time, and it happened to be this, and it was in the middle of the night. My partner and I at the time, we were fighting because of the lack of sleep. You're tired, and you just don't really have the emotional availability to be there for one another. So I'm in the middle of changing a diaper that was I call them a blowout. Poop up the back. I mean, just a straight up blowout. And Callie's going crazy. She's flailing her arms, and I'm trying to put her in the chokehold while I'm changing her. And she dips her foot in the diarrhea and flings it because she's, running all over the place. Bow, right in the face. And I started screaming on the top of my lungs. And in that moment, I was like, welcome to fatherhood. Right. So, and I say that because those moments definitely happen. But also now, something that I'm so conscious of is being aware of the changes that happen along the way. And the development of a child is a beautiful thing. Right. I mean, the whole journey of not being able to move, for a couple days, for a couple months, babies, they don't do anything. They just stare at you. They poop, they eat, they sleep. There's no real, life to them. Then they start to crawl. Then they start to walk. Then they start to run. Then they start to take everything and throw it and break it. And in those moments, you can get very wrapped up in oh my God, this sucks. Right. But then before you know it, my daughter's 3 and she's having full blown conversations with me like she's 13. And I'm already missing, and I'm only 3 years in, and I'm already missing those days because I feel like I didn't do enough back then.
Right.
And that's a tough thing as a dad. So I try to be very conscious, as I move forward. So to all the dads out there, good luck.
Good luck. Good luck.
That's the Taken movie, right, CV?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm not a movie guy. They always make fun of me. So whenever I could throw a little reference in there, I like to do that. This episode is brought to you by Hudson Valley Teeth Whitening. Hudson Valley Teeth Whitening is an experienced teeth whitening salon where you can get up to 7 shades lighter with just a 60 or 90-minute session in a professional and relaxing setting. They offer the most superior product coupled with the highest quality of customer service available to get you instant results. Whether you have an important event to attend, such as a wedding, birthday, anniversary, interview, or you are just unhappy with the color of your teeth, this LED light technology helps whiten your teeth fast and easy. At Hudson Valley Teeth Whitening, they understand how important your smile is to you, And speaking from personal experience, you'll be guided by highly efficient staff in a relaxing environment to reach your desired shade. Let them know you're a friend of Dave's from the No Snooze podcast and connect with them at HudsonValleyTeethWhitening.com or on Instagram at HV Teeth Whitening. Now, back to the epi. Billy, talk to me, give me the best advice that you've ever received in life.
The best advice I ever received in life. I don't even think it was advice. I think it was a quote. And the quote was, when you look into the eyes of yourself, look into the heart of others. Right? And I always used to say, like, what does that mean? Right? So we look in our eyes, and when we look in the mirror, we know what we want to do, and we know what we're passionate about and what we feel. But take the time to look in somebody else's heart and see where they're at and where they're going through, and how do you help, right? So I think that was always a quote that I like, and it was an unknown quote. So I say that because I'm in service, right? And I'm in the space to always want to be a vessel for people, right? And sometimes we can look at all the stuff that they haven't done on paper, whether they've been in jail or whether they've been here. But when you look into their heart and you feel their heart and you know that they come from a good place, then that's what you go on. Mm. You understand? So
it's deep stuff.
It's something that I started to learn how to do. Is like not see a person for what people say, but see a person for what's in their heart.
Mm. And the word service, it runs deep. I was just actually listening to Tony Robbins this morning. Mm-hmm. And he had a quote that basically said, life is all about growing and giving.
Right.
Right. He was explaining that progress to oneself is something that provides life. So you should always try to progress and do things in every aspect of your life for yourself. But on top of that, the one thing that became the most important thing in not only his life, but everybody that he's interviewed and been around, and Tony Robbins is one of the best life coaches of all time, was giving.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be financial giving.
Right.
It could be at times, whether, that's to the church or something like that, but it's pouring into others. Yeah. And that word of service is actually given. That's beautiful stuff, man. This might be a challenge for you because you're right in the thick of it. But this podcast platform, we strive to provide value to listeners. And you're going through probably one of the toughest times in your life in terms of grief and losing mom. You're 55 days in? How many days in?
55 today.
55 days in. What tactics and strategies would you be able to say that are, I don't think this ever gets easier by any means. The loss of a loved one, let alone mom, is something that's irreplaceable. But are there things that you're doing that you now know, okay, this tactic and strategy works, and something you want to share, I guess, with the listener in terms of grief?
So dealing with grief is probably
the grieving process, right?
Yeah, it's probably the hardest thing in the world, right? But I'm going to tell you to just be. Be angry, be mad, be upset, cry, be disappointed, right? Be all of those things. And the reason why I say be is because people would say to me when my mom died, be strong. And I say to them, how could you be strong when you just lost your mother? Right? How could you be strong when you just was with her 12 hours ago and now she's dead? How could you be strong, right? And being strong is something that we got to stop telling people to be when they going through something, to be strong. Just be. Be whatever that may be.
In that moment.
Just be. So like, even though 55 days, like I haven't been able to do anything, right? Because again, when you're dealing with the work that we do, you come outside every day and you put this mask on your face, right? Because especially, when you have to kind of be a leader in retrospect to different communities and different people, they always want to see you as strong, right? But I haven't been strong. I've been weak, right? Because it's like you wake up and that phone call that, you usually would get in the morning is not there. That prayer that you usually would get, or that, I'm proud of you, that you would usually get from your mother, right? And I think, people don't understand that unless they've been through that. And so I just tell people now, just be, right? And eventually you're going to have to move on, right? But grieving comes in waves, right? So you got to think about it. So let me explain something. Mom died Thanksgiving.
Mm.
My 50th birthday was December 4th.
Mm.
Right after December 4th, it was Christmas. Right after Christmas, it was New Year's. All of those things is family environment things that we do together. And the big thing about it was the process with my mom passing. My mom passed on Thanksgiving, but I couldn't bury her for almost 3 weeks later because my family had a tragic loss the week prior to that, and they were doing a funeral for a cousin in New York.
Wow.
So you see, I had to hold that process. The other thing was mom had, she was going to be buried in her husband's military plot, right? Now, you got to think about it. She lives in Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, which is a military state, right? Now you got to get an appointment.
Right.
So after her funeral was on the 8th, I couldn't bury her until the 14th. Then a week later was Christmas. So that grieving piece, and then at that time, have a whole bunch of people around me. So after New Year's, I'm by myself back home. Now I got to try to start going. So now, people say, oh, remember all the memories that you had with your mom. But people don't realize those memories make you sad because you don't have them anymore, right? So even now I'm getting choked up because the one thing that people always say is she's not gone, right? The spirit lives on. But a lot of times we haven't been taught how to live with the spirit and only the physical. When the physical is removed, you don't know nothing about the spiritual. And that's the grieving. Now the grieving part is really starting to take place.
I'm not just saying this because you're here. That's some of the best advice I've ever heard. And even for me, that's something that at times I almost fake it till I make it type thing, especially with loss and, with adverse moments. I am quick, and I kind of pride myself on being super quick to bounce back through action. But in my head, I'm still all jacked up, but I'm still going through the motions. And then my hope is that over time, it, gets easier and easier, which for me, it does happen to work, I think. But it kind of makes sense because even now, I mean, the situation that I'm in, I'm now dealing with things that are causing dreams and nightmares to happen at this moment. But it didn't just happen. This was a year and a half ago.
Right.
But maybe I didn't allow myself to just be and feel the things that I needed to feel. Fire advice. And I know CV over there was definitely receiving that. He's dealt with some loss along the way as well. This is for me personally. I am currently doing dry January, right? By the time this comes out, it'll be in February. Why haven't you don't drink, right?
No, I don't drink.
And very transparently, again, the first time that I met Billy, I'm like, yo, man, what are you drinking? What do you want, my brother? I got you. Because I'm like, a ginger ale. What kind of, is that the base, or you want something else in there? He's like, no, just a ginger ale. So, I have this, I envy people who live a sober lifestyle. And now through the lens of my mom, she's been sober 5+ years, like I said, great journey. But why haven't you, consumed alcohol? And was that a forever thing?
Yeah.
Really?
It's been for a long time. And I'm not going to say I'm a normant, right? And, I done probably had, I have. I'm not saying I haven't, but I have. But it's been childhood, right? Because you got to remember my mom was an addict, right? So I felt that I had an addictive personality and I didn't want to. I saw what it done, right? And how, it became a gateway for certain people.
Right.
And, it kind of spiraled out of control. And for me, I always said that I always wanted to be in control of myself and not have anything that impair my thinking or anything for me. So I always stayed away from it.
Now, and again, this is another advice thing, but I think a lot of people, me included, I get anxious and nervous about being in social settings and not picking up a drink, because at times it almost is a, kind of relaxes you. It puts you in a state where you're more inclined to talk to people and have conversation, but you can clearly still do this and have a great time not drinking, right? How it's the truth. And it might be funny for you to hear, right? But the second, I don't even have to be drinking it. If you just put one in my hand, I'm more inclined to be like, yo, what's going on? You know what I mean? So what, I guess, advice would you provide to people who get anxious about not drinking in social settings? Probably just be. Just being. Sometimes if you want to blend in, hey, if someone, you're on a date and she's drinking wine and you don't drink, hey, give me a wine glass with ginger ale or something in it. Right? Ginger ale can look like white wine, right? You can get some cranberry juice. Prosecco. Yeah, Prosecco, right? But drinking something. But I don't, just be. Just be you. Just be you. Just be you. And you know what I mean? And be comfortable with being that. Like, I don't drink. Yeah. But you want to drink, but we're going to have a good time. Right. Right? Even in social settings, like, when we were all together, give me a ginger ale. Y'all drink and y'all have fun and I still laugh. But I was tired. I was saying, he was sleeping on the couch about 45 minutes to an hour in. And now I will say this, though. So I'm, I have not been drinking in January. Right. So I had a friend over and we're watching TV and she was very offended that I fell asleep at 9:30, but I'm seeing and I'm noticing in my body that without alcohol, I am a little bit more tired earlier at night. Right. And I think during the week, I always went to bed at 9:30. Right. But now, you catch me on the weekend and I'm not drinking, I'm still in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock. And it's great because in the morning, I'm like, let's go. Let's go. What's up? I'm very clear. And I do feel that aspect of it. But I have to say, not drinking has definitely made me a little bit more tired early on, but that's probably the natural part of my body. Yeah. And the alcohol piece hinders that and then allows you to stay up until 2, 3 in the morning. But here's the interesting about you. You're a workout buff. This dude work out 3-4 times a day. And it's just you still got time to have a drink. So it's and be a dad and, be a deputy commissioner. I pride myself on doing all the things, but here's the problem. When I do the thing, I'm doing the thing. Right. I don't really have an interest in having a drink. If we're going to go out, we're going out, and that's why I don't do it often. Right. But, I'll have a really good night and it'll be a whole thing. But that goes to the addictive piece of the upbringing. My mom and I are very similar. Right. I just happen to reroute my addictive tendencies. Right. And no addiction, in my opinion, is a good addiction. Right. But there are better addictions, obviously. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I am addicted to the feeling of, the creativity that I feel when I'm working out. Right. I'm addicted to that feeling. Right. I got to be honest with you. When I work out and I feel that pain, I want to push through a little bit more, and then the creativity that sparks it kind of gets me high. Right. It's my own personal high, but that's probably not good, but I've gotten to a place to where if I miss a workout, I'm okay. Right. When I first had my daughter and I had to miss that first workout, I was not okay. Right. But now being in a single parent household, there's times that I can't get it done. Right. I can't get it in. Yeah. But the priority level changes. Yep. All right, man, we're coming up on time. Anything that we did not touch on that you'd like to share? Nah, I think we, touched on everything, and I appreciate you having me. Oh, I do want to touch on, this other initiative that I just started called Sunday Dinner. Sunday Dinner. Oh, here's another. Okay. CD. Yeah. Here's another great name. This guy has a knack for great names. Sunday Dinner. Explain this, please. So Sunday Dinner, and I just want you to understand, Sunday Dinner is spelled S-O-N. Sunday Dinner, right? And the reason why I started Sunday Dinner is because it was a speak space for men to have conversations, whether it's dealing with our mental health, whether it's dealing with our finances, whether it's dealing with grief, whether it's dealing with, a loss of a relationship, right? Because sometimes we in society hold men as you're supposed to be strong, you're supposed to have it all together, right? And sometimes we don't have the answers. And sometimes we need people to talk to. And just regular conversation. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to create this speak space for men to come and have these conversations with one another, build community, and help each other through these, and also pool resources, right? Because I think
that's the thing that lacks in a lot of men, right? And this is not for men of color. It's for men, right? Because I think everybody's a son. So we come break bread over dinner, and the caveat to this is making sure that we have a QHP or professional to help us lead the conversation and give us things to walk away from, tangible things to walk away from. So whether it's investment, right? Like maybe we may have Rashad or one of them say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to sponsor every man that's at this dinner $300, right, to invest and show you how to invest. So now you have those resources. When we're dealing with mental health, right, we partner up with a mental health agency who can provide free therapy, right, for 10, 12 sessions. And then hopefully after that, those individuals who are taking those therapy sessions will say, you know what, I'm going to continue therapy on my own because it helped. Right. So for me, it's just like I'm an advocate for our men. Right. Because a lot of times there's no one voice and have an opinion about us. Right. Everything is always men is not doing this. They're not showing up. They're not being fathers. Nah, let's show them that we are. So I created that Speak Space for men, and we have these dinner series that's, all around the country that just have these dinner series. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm putting it out there. That's where we going, right? So again, I started in the community, but then I push it out, right?
Wow.
Because it's something that's needed in our community. So anytime you look up, you have girls going to brunch, girls having these empowerment, girls doing this, women doing this, but where are our men at? Now, our men need the support and our men need the help too. And I want to be able to say, men, it's okay to say, you know what, I need the help. So yeah, that's what sparks.
I love that initiative, and it aligns well with a men's retreat that I'm doing with my buddy too. Action cultivates excellence. It's just a personal and professional men's development retreat, 3-day experience where we'll be doing a lot of that stuff.
Right.
Man, I appreciate you. This
brother,
conversation was definitely as soon as I met you, I knew that I wanted to further the relationship and conversation. And shout out to Angelo and Priya for the connection.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to establish this relationship and do some more things down the line.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me, man, and continue the great work that you are doing.
Thank you very much. Okay. Guys, as always, whether you've listened to 1 or 173 with Billy Council, we just want to say thank you. Spread the word and please share the show. You guys are the reason that this show is growing. And we can't be any more grateful to you guys. As always, you can shop the latest merch at nosnoozeshop.com. And until next time, stop snoozing.
Get up and get after it.
Billy Council.
My God.
Yo, that was some serious. Thank you guys for tuning in. That's another epi in the books. You can follow us on Instagram at No Snooze Podcast and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, No Snooze. Shop the latest merch at nosnoozeshop.com. Come on.